Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we make history by debuting the Hippy Dippy Tag Team Championship belts. And that's right, this is your Tag Team Championship matchup. On one side is the tag team made up of two AnCaps known for status everywhere. They don't like the government and they don't like you. They're the fedora tipping duo, Fabian Liberty, and last username, the Market Justice Warriors. And in the opposite corner are two lefties known for standing up for VTubers everywhere. Two people who know how to flip a buck at the earliest sign of drama. They are ChudLogic and Eristocracy, Toontown.
I'm going to now start with the rules of today's match. Welcome both of you, all of you, all four of you, for the first ever Tag Team Championship match. I would like to welcome you all. So, the rules are simple. They're hippy-dippy standard rules. You do not talk over me while I'm talking. You do not do any, attacks on people's, inheritable characteristics. You can't be like, hey, look at this dumb fucking cartoon. I understand. I feel it too, but we cannot do that tonight, okay? We are not allowed any VTuber discrimination because their civil rights organizations have got involved. Ugh, whatever. And advertisers, of course. But that's the basic rules. I don't think I need to explain it to all of you because all of you have been participants of my events for so long. And so we're probably just going to go straight into it since you've already been introduced. The topic is child labor, and should it be legal? I think we all agree that's the topic. Should it be legal? Okay.
Right. Sure.
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
So, since they are arguing in the affirmative, I'm going to allow Market Justice Warriors to go first. I'm going to give you guys a minute and 30 seconds in that range. Just try to keep a clock. I got to use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
You gave us 5 minutes when you discussed this before.
I'm sorry. I forgot.
I
sorry.
thought we were arguing whether or not there's child labor laws are okay or a good thing.
Well, yes.
Right.
If you believe they're legal, if they should be legal, then we shouldn't have child labor laws. Yes.
Yes. Last username or I are saying to abolish child labor laws.
Based. Giga Chad, let's go.
Okay,
we have 5 minutes.
Sorry, you got.
Sorry,
we have 5 minutes.
Okay.
As long as
Everybody, shut the fuck up. We are running on a very tight schedule. 5 minutes. Fabian, go.
Username first.
Okay, either it doesn't matter. Go.
Thank you, Dylan. Okay, it's very easy to say. Think of the children, right? Think of the children. I think you're going to hear our opponents saying that a lot tonight. They're going to tell you about children toiling away in sweatshops and mines, and they will make you feel like, I don't like that. Make it go away. Make it go away. That's understandable. The people in the developing world are a lot like you and me, right? They are not evil. They're not stupid. They care about their own lives, and they really care about their children, okay? Just like us. Just like us, they're trying to give themselves and their children the best life they can, and they're trying to do that in circumstances that are very tough and very difficult for us in the developed world to understand and appreciate. When a child has a job, it's probably for a good reason, okay? It's probably because the best option available to the child is to have that job. And however bad that may seem that that kid has to work, the alternative is probably worse, okay? When you, in your infinite virtue and wisdom step in and say, no, 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 you can't try to help yourself in this particular way because it makes me feel uncomfortable. You are condemning that child to that worse alternative. Okay? When something that people need is outlawed, people go around the law to get it. The child needs to work in order to survive, and they can't get a legal job, they will get an illegal job. And in that illegal job, the child is likely to lose whatever other protections the law would otherwise provide them. You know, things like workplace safety regulations or contract law, or even their basic personal rights they're not going to have if they're working underground, okay? If you don't like the idea of a child working a legal job, you should be far more upset by the idea of a child working in the black market. But when you impose child labor laws on a society that cannot yet afford to have children not work, that's exactly what you are doing. You're condemning those children to work in the black market. It sucks that there's still societies in the world like this. And if you want to talk about how to solve poverty, yeah, great. So do I. I'd love to do that because that's the only way to end child labor, to get people wealthy enough that they can afford to end it. Until then, please don't sabotage the lives of poor people just to make your rich ass feel more virtuous. Hand it over to Scott.
Yeah, so my debate partner here is giving forth the argument, and what I want to do throughout this debate in the intro as well is give some of the data so that we understand this, because a good argument is a good argument, but without data to back it up, it's not there. And fortunately for us, almost all of the data, tons of studies and surveys and organizations absolutely support our opinions. So just one example of that to begin with is in 1992, Senator Harkin, he proposed a bill known as the Child Labor Deterrence Act. Fortunately, it did not pass. And this bill was designed to boycott goods from countries where the ready-made garment industry was using child labor. Unfortunately, what did happen is in Bangladesh, the individuals that were hiring these children for about 53 cents an hour, I know it sounds horrible, right? They fired roughly 50,000 of them. And in 1997, both Oxfam and UNICEF did a study to find out, well, what happened to these children that were fired from child labor? And what they found was that a majority of them ended up homeless, ended up in worse jobs where they were more likely to be injured in agriculture and the service industry. And most importantly, thousands of young girls disappeared into child sex trafficking and prostitution. And I'll finish off our conversation by quoting Nobel Prize winning left-wing economist Paul Krugman talking about this very issue of what happened in Bangladesh. The direct result was that Bangladeshi textile factories stopped employing children. But did the children go back to school? Did they return to happy homes? Not according to Oxfam, which found that the displaced child workers ended up in even worse jobs or on the streets, and then a significant number were forced into prostitution. And I yield my time.
Okay, now Toontown, you will be allotted 5 minutes as well. You can start in any way you want.
All right. So child labor is inherently exploitative by definition, right? I think our opponents are arguing for youth employment. So there is a bit of a definitional issue here. But for the sake of the argument, I'll expand it to, to any form of youth employment. So child labor is a violation of human rights and has been demonstrated time and time again to hinder children's development, potentially leading to severe lifelong physical or psychological damage. Evidence points to a strong link between household poverty and childhood labor, and child labor perpetuates poverty across generations by keeping low socioeconomic children out of education and limiting their prospects for upward social mobility. So this lowering of the entire human capacity of a society has been linked to slow economic growth and social development for both developing and non-developing countries. Recent studies by the ILO, which is the International Labor Organization, have demonstrated that the move towards the elimination of child labor and developing economies could generate a large economic benefits, far greater than the costs, which are mostly associated with investment in better schooling and social services. So therefore, child labor laws are a useful tool that should not be abandoned, not just for the betterment of children, as my opponents thought that I was going to be arguing, right? Or for their dignity, but for the betterment of society as a whole. And And I'd like Chud to now speak.
Okay, really simple. Child labour laws are necessary to prevent perverse incentives that will lead children to dangerous, exploitative circumstances. At the end of the day, this comes down to consent. If you think children can consent to all forms of labour without any legal oversight, I'd have to ask the AnCaps, what else do you think children can consent to?
Is that your ending of your opening study? Okay, so now it is an open period. You guys have you guys have about an hour.
Why do you guys think there should be 13-year-old strippers?
Pause. I'm going to answer aristocracies before I go to your meme question, but don't worry, I have an
It's
answer
a serious
for you.
question. I
No,
didn't
it's
listen
not.
to opening
No, it's
statements
not.
because it was
If you
fucking
don't-
snooze
if you
shit.
don't- Pause.
What do you want
ChudLogic.
13-year-old strippers?
ChudLogic.
Wait.
ChudLogic.
Tell me about the
If you
13-year-old
can't tell
strippers that you
wait,
want. Go on.
ChudLogic. If you can't tell the difference between someone working in the textile industry and sex prostitution and things like that, which you're hinting at, then I have a question. Are you a pedophile?
Well, no, I'm not a pedophile. You're the one that
Okay,
wants to
all right.
abolish
Well, then you know the
labour laws.
difference.
You
So
want
shut
child
the fuck up.
prostitutes,
No,
and
you know
hate
there's a
child
difference.
strippers.
Chud,
There's no
I think
legislation.
you asked a reasonable question. What can a
Yeah,
child
I did.
consent
Thank you.
to?
Thank you.
So let me ask you this. Do you think a child could consent to, say, go to school?
I don't. Well, I think a child can consent to go to school, yeah, but that's a place of like safety
Okay.
and learning for them, isn't it? It's not being a stripper. Are you saying that going to school is like being a stripper for a kid? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I don't think a child can be a stripper. I would not like that at all. I don't think that should be legal. But
Sure,
we're
that's
not talking
great, but
about
then how-
children being strippers? We're talking about children being able to work at a job.
Okay, but you say you want to abolish child labour laws. Child labour laws are the thing that stops children from being strippers.
All right. So
No,
we have
I'm
to
pretty
deal.
sure child
we have to,
sexual exploitation laws are what prevent that.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have to deal with the low IQ memes of ChudLogic before we can get to a serious debate with
So under an
aristocracy.
AnCap society, would there be laws or not? I thought it was anarchism.
So here's how you have to understand,
child
and I
labor laws
understand.
we're talking about.
Here's
We're
no.
talking about all
What
laws.
we're talking about is consent, right? That's the question that you're asking, and you don't understand how libertarians have consent because you haven't read about it, and I understand that.
Well, no,
So let
'cause
me
it's a
educate
meme.
you.
It's a meme ideology. It's a waste of time, isn't it?
Right. You're memeing.
Forget
I
about
get
it.
it.
Doesn't matter.
Let me
Libertarians
explain
don't matter. We're only talking about child labor laws here.
I get
We're
it. You
not
want
talking about
13-year-old
making
strippers. I
children
get it.
into
It's
strippers.
fine. I get it. Listen, I know that's what you want. It's all good. Anyway, sorry, I've talked a lot. Let someone else talk.
Yeah. So again, you're memeing and you're not having a serious debate, and I don't know why you're here if that's all you're going to do. But anyways, if you want to talk about why children can consent to a paper route, right, and why children can't consent to being child strippers, it's a very simple thing, right? A libertarian philosophy of children's rights is based off of the idea that children are emerging adults. Right? They are not yet adults because they are not psychologically able to express their will. And so parents are considered guardians or custodians of their will and of their rights. Now, so under certain circumstances, such as bad economic circumstances, or because let's say they want the child to work in the family restaurant sometimes, or they want the kid to have a paper route, or they want the kid to be able to go out and cut grass in the neighborhood. The reason parents are allowed as custodians of their rights and their will to let them do these things is because they are not inherently exploitative given the circumstances in which they live under. In the textile industry, that is abject poverty where they are trying to get food. In America, that's something like cutting grass or a paper route or a lemonade stand. The fact of the matter is the moment that you use your power as a parent, as a guardian of the custodian of the child's will and rights to subject them to physical damage of their body or to subject them to psychological trauma of being in the sex industry as a child, you forego your rights as a parent over this.
Jesus Christ, get to the point, bro. What the fuck?
Right, you started realizing that I was right.
There's lots of things that we make children do, right? We make them go to school.
All I hear you is trying to justify 13-year-old strippers. That's all I can hear.
You're a fucking liar. Stop.
In their best interest, right? We know it's good for kids to eat broccoli. It's good for them to go to school. They may not like it. It may be hard. It may be stressful even. But we do it because it's in their best interest. It's good for their lives. And unfortunately, there are places in the world where that are poor enough where a kid going to work and making money for the family is actually in their best interest.
Damn, both of you
see
chip in
why.
to defeat
That's a
me
huge
in the
claim that you
battleground of
just made
ideas.
that it's in their best interest. Can you actually?
Because if they
substantiate
don't,
that?
they'll starve or be homeless. Like these, they need to.
Wait, are there other alternatives to getting food?
Aristocracy, did you get most of your debate resources
If there
from
were
the
alternatives,
ILO?
they'd be doing them.
I'm just curious, did you get most of your information from the ILO surveys for tonight?
Some of my information from the ILO surveys, but
Okay,
I got
right.
it basically from the entire structure of the current literature on
Okay.
this subject.
No, that's fine. You have
There's a
other sources,
consensus.
right?
There's an international consensus on child labor laws.
Right. So what we know about the ILO, right, unlike, let's say, World Bank surveys, is that they're a lot more focused on getting rid of child labor completely, and they're very ideologically biased in that regard. So when you actually dig into ILO papers, right, as opposed to just reading like their large reports, you can look and see that a lot of the data that they put in their large reports is not actually accurate once you go into the report. So, for example, you can look at the Ugandan survey, right? And what the ILO will say is, oh, they have 35% child labor, right? But when you actually go into it, what you actually find is that, unlike the World Bank, that's considering child labor to be 14 and below, they're considering anyone that is a day under 18 to be child labor, number one. And number two, they're considering anyone that is under a day younger than 18 that has a part-time job to be part of child labor. So me, when I was working at Burger King, right, and I was in high school, would be considered someone that is being exploited via child labor. So there are some issues with using ILO data, and the way that they do their studies is not necessarily accurate. And so, like, I would say, like, maybe we shouldn't be using that necessarily as a resource.
Well, I think the data sounds
But,
good. I think
if you
I
do
like
me a favor,
data. Let's
FL
use that. It sounds good to me.
Right, of
I'm
course.
supporting Eris on that point.
Could you Google child labor definition and just read out the definition for us?
You want me to give Google's definition? Hold on. I don't know how long it's been since I've actually used Google. I got to get it off of DuckDuckGo, guys. So
why are you on
I'm not sure why you want to. I'm not sure why you do it. So child labor.
Searches going on DuckDuckGo. Interesting.
All right. So what is Google's definition of child labor? I'm not giving a specific definition so far. Let me put in definition. The use of children in industry or business, especially when illegal or considered inhumane. That's Google's definition.
Considered inhumane is a part of the definition. Therefore, the concept of child labor does not equal youth employment. You seem to think that
No, I'm talking about ILO's data,
right? And you guys didn't argue. Let's debate youth employment, right?
Aristocracy.
I'm going to be like, okay, that's a different story, right? But you argue child labor, which is inherently.
You just proved
please,
the point.
I didn't interrupt you.
Wait,
I didn't interrupt you.
We'll let Aristocracy go.
Right. When it comes to the actual definition, right?
Mm-hmm.
The definition that the ILO uses, okay, is the definition that's internationally recognized, right? Which you actually just read out, which they might use different words, but it all basically means the same thing, that child labor is a specific type of youth employment that is inherently exploitative, right? Which is obviously subjective based on people's moral standards, etc., right? And this is why you have different child labor laws, right, in different locations. It's one of the use of child labor laws because you can kind of change it, right, depending on what's useful and what's important for that society as a whole. For example, there used to be a huge problem with child labor in the 19th century, particularly when it came to here, let me find this 1 second.
Well, while you're looking for that, two things real quick.
No, 1 second.
One, you proved my point.
There used to be a
Okay.
childhood labor issue, particularly when it came to children working in cotton mills, right? And then if they found out and children would regularly be hired for cotton mills because they could only get into the smallest areas and they could also be paid incredibly lowly, right? So to this day, we still have rules that there are specific rules that it's harsher. It's harder as a child to work in a cotton mill than it is to work, say, as an actor in a studio, right? And this is one of the reasons why I'm so shocked that you guys agreed to argue this, right? Because you could actually say that all childhood youth employment is fine, but let's just ban one thing, and then we would just win the debate because at least it's had one kind of use.
Right. So two things. Number one, by asking me to give this definition that you want to use as the internationally recognized definition, right? You prove my point about what I was saying about the ILO, right? Because they report numbers that are not child labor. They include youth unemployment, which was what I was trying to explain to you. So I appreciate you proving me right there.
Don't do that.
The second thing that I wanted to say is that no, what we're debating is child labor laws. We're not debating child labor and youth unemployment, right? Because child labor laws can affect both child labor and youth unemployment. And so that's the distinction here, is that the debate is about child labor laws.
Do you think 6-year-olds should be able to work?
Should be able to work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty hard for them to work.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine a scenario where it would make sense.
No, answer my question. If there was a suitable job that was found for a 6-year-old, you want to abolish all child labor laws, so you think a 6-year-old should be able to go and work somewhere, correct?
Well-
if my choice is between 6-year-old works or 6-year-old starves, I'll take work.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Fair
Oh,
enough.
no,
but
no, wait, no. I'm not saying that's the choice.
What
I'm
circumstances do you
I'm
think
saying,
a 6-year-old works under?
well, I don't know.
Like,
You're the one that the thing that stops children from going to work is labor laws, and you want to abolish them. So presumably you would be fine with a 6-year-old going to work because you don't want to have
no,
labor
the
laws
thing
for
that
children.
stops them from working is not needing to, is being able to.
you know,
afford not to work.
I've seen 6-year-olds working, right? You know, in one of my visits to New York City and Chinatown.
What's with all the? Why can't you just
right?
answer the question? It's a simple question, yes or no. But you can't. Seem
Why are
to
you
answer it.
interrupting me?
You're fucking wiggling around.
Why are you interrupting me with
wiggling
more
around the fucking
memes?
question because you know it makes you look terrible.
No, you're trying to engage
You're
in memes
dodging.
instead of a
Well, okay,
serious
okay,
debate. I'm not
okay.
dodging. I'm
Right, you wanna
specifically
abolish-
giving
Wait,
It's
wait,
really
okay,
simple.
wait. Okay.
I'm
Okay,
specifically
stop,
giving an
stop.
example.
Okay. So one of the hippy dippy rules is when I'm talking, nobody else is talking. So I'm gonna allow Fabian to respond, and then if
Go
you
on.
think he dodged Chud, then you can jump on him after he's done responding. Fabian?
Okay, no
Yeah,
problem.
so I've seen there's two examples. One we all know about, and the one that's anecdotal, right? So I've seen 6-year-olds working. When I went to visit one of the many times I went to New York City, I went deep into Chinatown, and I've seen 6-year-olds. Maybe they were 7 or 8, very young, very very young, small children helping out in the family business and learning a little bit of the trade, learning a little bit how customer service is done, and getting good valuable experience that helped them with their family, and also because they're poor, which we will argue with tons of data, they probably couldn't afford daycare. And so they're there helping the family and learning how business works. And it's actually a positive thing. And also, of course, everyone in the audience has seen childhood actors. There are 6-year-old actors that are
Okay.
working in the entertainment
There's
industry.
a lot of words. There's a lot of words here.
You just keep saying I'm saying a lot of words, right? And I'm
You
giving
are
you
saying a lot of
examples
words. It's
defeating
boring.
your
I'm bored of
meme
you
arguments.
talking. I'm bored of you talking. I just want to say
Well,
one
if you're so
simple thing.
bored,
You
you
want to
should
give up? You
leave.
want to concede? That's fine.
I'm not going to concede because you're fucking idiots. Here's the situation, okay?
Can you
6-year-old.
substantiate that?
Substantiate what? That you're a fucking
We said I'm a fucking
idiots.
idiot, so prove
Yeah,
it.
you're an AnCap. So there's your proof right there. So listen, here's the
Okay.
situation, okay?
So
So
what are you? A
6-year-old,
socialist, right? You must be an idiot.
okay, well that's just the Uno Reverso. Good one. Here's the
Yeah,
situation,
exactly.
okay? There's no child labor laws, so a 6-year-old, in your mind, then can go and sign a contract to go and work for a company, and they can just go and work for that company, correct?
No,
Well, what's going to stop them if there's no law stopping them?
they're 6 years old. They don't have the ability to sign
Well,
contracts.
they might stop them, or their parents might stop them, or
But there's no law to stop
I
them,
don't want my
right?
6-year-old
There's
to
no
do that.
legal. There's
But
no
if the
legal
parents are-
framework for which to stop them.
Do you think that parents hate their children? Do you think that parents of the third world hate their children, and that's why they send them to work? Like
Well,
what?
no, of course not. But what I'm saying to you, this is the whole point why labor laws are necessary,
some
right?
do.
Because it prevents perverse
Because
incentives.
otherwise, like, parents
at least
would just
them being
send all their
exploited.
kids to
Parents
work.
do
'cause
hate their
parents
children.
like,
Okay, wait. I didn't hear what Chud's response to the question was.
And also, some parents do hate their children, yeah. And some of them, because they're so poor, they would just see them as a way of sending them off to work, prevents them from going to school. And I think it's also worth noting, you keep pointing to the global south as some bastion of child labor rights or something like that. The UN is actually trying to abolish child labor globally because child labor is considered by most normal people who aren't totally fucking insane to be really bad. So actually the
of course,
world
they're trying to
is working
abolish it.
against
Everybody
you.
wants to see child labor go away. I'm just saying that
Sure.
child labor laws are not a good.
But you're
way to
saying
do
there
that.
should be no laws whatsoever. So that would mean then there's
No, I don't think. I don't
what
think
lo-
laws are going to help. They're not
Okay.
addressing the problem. You're just
So
making.
there's no
they're not
laws in
fixing
place
the
then.
issue.
You're just hiding
There's
the
no laws in
symptom.
place
Wait,
that are
wait.
going to prevent them from getting exploited. It's
stop.
crazy.
Wait, stop.
Real quick.
Wait. Okay, I didn't hear anything last username said, so could you repeat that, please?
The problem is poverty. Poverty is what
Mm-hmm.
causes child labor. And making child labor laws is not going to make poverty go away. It's actually going to make it worse, okay? Poverty is a complicated problem. You can't solve it with these sort of knee-jerk, feel-good laws.
And
It's
I
a
don't think that
difficult
just
problem.
having unrepentant child labor without any legislation to protect children is good. I think we need to very least have some measures in place to protect children if they
so-
absolutely have to engage in labor. But
So
you're
let's look at
suggesting an
Costa Rica.
abolishment.
Well, there are laws to protect them if they have to engage in labor.
What's Costa
But
Rica
in order
got
to
to
do
do
that,
with
their jobs have to be legal, right? You have to be working legally in order to have legal protections, things like workplace safety,
Yep.
or things like the law enforcing your contract, or making sure that your boss isn't violating your rights. In order to have that, it has to be a legal job. If they're working illegally and getting paid under the table, they lose all that protection. It's a much worse situation.
This is exactly
driving
why
them
we
underground.
described how children actually became what you like to meme as child strippers. It was child labor laws and the threat of child labor laws that created child strippers, not the other way around. As a matter of fact,
That's
in
not
Costa
true.
Rica,
That's not true.
no, I mean, I literally quoted Paul Krugman at you. Like, I can't give
I
you
don't
a
give
more
a shit about
friendly
Paul
source.
Krugman. Who even is that? Sounds like a fucking nerd.
Nobel Prize winning left wing economist,
blah, blah.
and
I mean,
also
Obama won a Nobel
1997
Prize,
UNICEF.
like-
Right. Oh, so, well,
Fucking
let's look
boring.
at Costa Rica, right? So
Boring.
you brought the ILO again, right? Those surveys. So Costa Rica, for example, has child labor laws. It says that children 15 under the age of 15 cannot work. And despite that, 43% of the youth labor in Costa Rica are under the age of 15. And we have countless examples of this from studies in America as well. There are a ton of studies, Golden and Katz 2003, that show that compulsory education laws and minimum wage laws that were designed to stop child labor in certain states in America compared to states that didn't have them had less than a 5% increase on the likelihood of high school attendance. And Moeling 1999 showed that there was no statistic difference in 1880, 1900, and 1910 in America between states that had child labor laws and states that didn't have child labor laws, and how much youth employment and child labor existed.
Not the laws that make it go away. It's the wealth.
Blah, 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 blah. Studies, boring, boring, boring. Okay, it's a little fucking
they
bullshit.
are boring. It's true. Studies are really boring. The truth is really fucking boring. It's not nearly fun.
But the scientific consensus, even if studies are boring, right? I don't want them to come under this impression that like the studies are on their side. Like the consensus by historians, the consensus by international human rights experts, right? All agree that the studies are actually on our side, right? And I can demonstrate that, and it's not just from the ILO, right? Like one of the best studies is actually from Eric V. Emmons, okay, from Amherst Education. Here, I will post in chat.
Where are you posting? Oh, in the Discord chat?
Oh, I was posting it in Hippy. Oh, it didn't. Oops.
In voice text, I'm assuming.
We're probably not going to be able to read a study right now, but if you could summarize it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So 218 million children work in the world today. 70% are in activities classified as child labor under local laws. While in policy circles, child labor is often viewed as a rights issue, it's also an economic issue. Right. Working children are both a cause and a consequence of a lack of economic development. Why? So they agreed with you on one end, right, that it is also a consequence, but it's also a cause. And it's very hard to figure out what ends up being the larger issue. This is why child labor laws are not the answer to poverty, but they're part of the answer to poverty. And if we look at, for example, the United States, in 1890, childhood labor reached basically its peak, where 18% of all children in the United States were being exploited in child labor. Right. By the 1930s, after a series of laws, right, that helped poverty, that helped work conditions, that employed women, right, and that also started to limit child labor, right, and make child labor more costly, childhood labor had actually dropped to 5%, right, and these are going by the very different definitions of the ILO that you claim the ILO was using, which was not even true.
Yeah. So again, it was, and to make your argument even stronger, it was 25% of boys and 18% of boys and girls in 1900. But again, the problem is that we actually have economists that look at, was there a statistically significant difference in states that had child labor laws and states that didn't have child labor laws? And what they found is there's no statistically significant difference. That completely defeats your argument, right? What the reason was, and the reason Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938 came about, was while child labor was already well on its way out, is because what we have found over and over and over again is that once in today's dollars, we get a little bit over 10,000, 11,000. The number shifts a little bit based off of inflation. But once you get over around $10,000, $11,000 per person in terms of their income, child labor basically disappears, right? So it's an economic issue. And again, we can look at, Edmonds and Pavnik 2005 that found that 73% of the amount of child labor can be explained by one variable, which is just GDP.
Yeah, as people get wealthy, the child labor goes away, and people make laws against child labor because it's politically good, right? People like the feeling of making the laws, like to vote for people to do that. But it's really hard to tell if it's the laws causing the child labor to go away or the child labor causing the laws. And according to economic studies, it's actually the wealth that makes it goes away.
Listen, you fucking nerds have forgotten one important point, okay, which I'm surprised about because you're reading all these fucking boring ass studies. What about compulsory schooling? That had a massive impact on the reduction in child labour. Compulsory schooling could, in fact, have a big impact in the situation in these developing countries.
Unfortunately, we were making you go to sleep, so you didn't hear one of the studies because it's too boring to you because you can't be
Well, you're
bothered to do
speaking
research.
for fucking 5 minutes. Boring as
Yeah,
fuck.
no, it was like I said, compulsory education laws and minimum wage laws had less than a 5% impact on high school attendance, and child labor was something like, I think it was 7%. I didn't write that.
Sounds like you're just
figure
picking
down.
a detail out of the hat to try and make your point. Load of bullshit.
Wait, you
Compulsory
realize
education helps.
you know where
Simple.
that quote comes from? Do you know where
From
that quote that
Golden
you
and
just read
Katz
off?
2003. Yeah, economists.
Dude, that quote is by Edmund, the guy that did the study that I just linked.
Okay, well, let's
That,
look at
that
a
literally
different
comes to the
study.
conclusion that
I'm
you're
not-
wrong.
it's not clear that your
That's a
study
different.
supports
Wait,
your-
wait, wait, wait,
Hadwick
wait,
is a
wait,
different
wait,
study.
stop
You
for a
just been
second.
fucking demolished. You're
Stop.
struggling, both of you.
Stop, I didn't
Also,
get
you didn't post
stop,
it.
Wait, stop, I didn't hear what Eris said. Could you say that again?
The quote that he did is from someone named Eric V. Edmonds, right? Who was the research associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research in Cambridge.
No, this is
Right?
from Golden and
Yeah.
Katz 2003. It
Floundering.
wasn't a quote. it
Floundering.
was
He's
a
how they
paraphrase.
flounder. Oh, dear.
Eris,
No,
I'm really
it's a
sorry your
different
partner
study.
couldn't be more
Silence.
helpful to you.
Silence.
Feel bad for you. But yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not silent. I'm saying what she's saying simply isn't true. It's from a different
Eris,
study.
your description
It
of,
could say the
of
same
a
thing,
study didn't sound like it actually supported your argument. The conclusion was something like, well, the labor laws and the poverty going away are sort of have to go hand in hand. But I mean,
The
it doesn't really
conclusion
establish.
is that rising incomes are associated with improvement. However, these factors all lead in declines to the economic activity of children in the long term, right? And
Rising wages
just in
are
general,
associated with
the
improvement in
consensus,
child labor.
this study was actually what was used as evidence for child labor laws in the international world, right? You guys are using arguments that were used
Does
literally
it
100
establish
years
causation,
ago.
though? Does
Yes,
it
it
establish that the
does.
laws actually? Okay, how does it do that?
Yes. How does it do that? I mean, like you didn't post the study, and so we would like for you to explain it to us then.
Yeah, it's in a PDF. I tried to post it, but it didn't work. 1 second. Chad, you can take over while I do this. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So, listen, clearly you guys are floundering a bit. Eris has caught you out a bit there, and now you're desperately trying to see what the study she's
I'm
talking
not
about. So you
floundering.
can
I
come up
want
with
to
your
know
next
what her
argument.
study is.
Projecting a little bit there.
Yeah,
No,
I
not
mean,
at all. Listen, you guys are falling over each other to get your points out. It's kind of embarrassing for you, but it is what it is.
you haven't made any points.
I just want an answer. No, I have. I just want an answer to my earlier question. Do you think, yes or no, a 6-year-old, should there be any
Here, I
law
posted
preventing a
it
6-year-old
in
from
chat.
going and signing a
Post in general
contract
chat.
and working? Do
We
you think
already
a
explained
6-year-old
this. You
Well, no,
went
you
to
didn't
sleep.
answer me. You just went on
The
a
answer is
fucking
no.
massive
The
diatribe.
answer
The
is
answer is no. We
What's going to
already
stop
answered
them if
this.
there isn't a law to stop them, though?
To stop them is not wanting to do it.
What are you
It's just
talking
terrible.
about?
People
But
usually
if there's
don't
no
like
legal
doing things that are
framework-
terrible,
Yeah, but you're
or
just
making their kids
relying
do
on
things that are
parents.
terrible.
But
That's
you're
what to
just
stop
relying
them.
on parents doing the right
To
thing.
stop them
I
is
think
being-
that's stupid. I think that's insane. Like, some parents are not going to do the right thing, and that's why you need
Some
laws in
parents
place
are not
in
good
order
parents, but
Yeah,
most
exactly. You
parents
need the law
care
in
about
order
their
to
kids
motivate them to do the
more
right thing.
than anybody else in the world, than any
No, this is
lawmaker,
stupid.
than any activist.
There's loads of what about
than anybody
abusive
else,
parents?
Okay?
Do you know abusive
Generally
parents
speaking,
exist? Do you know abusive
think-
parents exist? Have you heard of abusive
Of
parents
course.
before?
God, of course
Sure
we
they
know
do.
this. No one
So
is
you-
saying
legal
we're
You
not
know what else
saying
exists?
Protect children from
Okay,
Abusive
abusive
laws.
parents.
Okay, stop. Okay,
Abusive-
stop. Okay, wait. Okay, so I can't hear myself think. So the question was asked: do you know that abusive parents exist? So I would like to hear either Fabian or Lester's name respond to that.
Yeah, he can respond, and then I can
abusive
answer the original
abusive
question.
parents exist, but most parents care about their kids, and I think generally speaking, parents care about their kids more than anybody else in the world,
It doesn't
more than
matter what most
lawmakers,
parents do.
more than activists,
You
more
need
than
to
the
look
UN.
at what abusive parents do and consider what they're going to do and have laws in
ChudLogic.
place to make sure kids aren't harmed.
Okay,
ChudLogic.
You can make.
ChudLogic.
I have no
Scott.
problem with laws against child abuse. Laws
Right.
that say parents can't hurt their kids or torture them or
child
do
labor
things
is
that
a
are
part of
unnecessary.
child abuse laws. Don't you realize
But
that?
a law
it's a
that
subset
just
of that.
arbitrarily excludes an option for a family that may be their best option. That may be, you can imagine being something that a parent who really cares about their kid makes them do because it's the best option, because the alternative is
Yes.
worse. I don't see any reason to make a law against that. I
Your
don't see any
argument is
reason to
literally
doubt that
most
parent.
parents love their kids, so we don't need to worry about it, and that's silly. Like, obviously, there's going to be some parents that act badly, okay, and we need to bear that in mind, and that's why we need strong labor laws, because children
Laws
cannot
against child
themselves.
abuse.
Those two are not the same
Why should we have
thing.
child abuse
We are-
laws if
we already
parents
said-
always
I'm
protect their
I'm
children?
sorry. Everybody's talking at
I've
the
been
same
trying to
time.
answer this.
Okay, Fabian, you want to answer that question?
Yes, I'm just trying to answer this. You keep trying to conflate child labor laws, right, with all laws in existence and how we want no laws whatsoever, because I'm assuming you think that anarchism means no laws when it means no rulers, right? We're talking about economic laws. We're talking about laws that are enforced in an entirely different way, right? Which is not what the debate is about. You're trying to push this debate into a different direction because you're floundering. And aristocracy is
I'm not
doing a
floundering
great
at all.
job.
I've asked you one question, and you're fucking floundering like I've never seen before.
Oh my God, dude, we've answered your questions like 10 times and we've let you control
Okay,
the
can we-
flow
can
of
we
this
go back
debate
to
It
the
because
looks
you're a
like
study?
rude
you've answered the
asshole.
question.
Okay, so
What
can we
did it
go
look
back
like,
to
man?
study
Name one
since
question we haven't.
you did quote Eric Edmonds, right?
I did
Before
not.
you
Please
quoted that
stop
other
saying
person.
that. Please
Okay,
stop saying
no,
that.
you did. And
No, I did not.
so the conclusion
I
that
did.
Eric
Please
that
stop lying.
the
Please stop
conclusion that
lying.
Eric Edmonds, I'm speaking, the conclusion that Eric Edmonds comes to in the study, right, which I linked for you. I had to upload it because it's a file, right? It's a PDF if you can open it right now, right? The conclusion that he comes to, if you don't want to read it right now, okay, is because of this impact of child labor on economic growth, there is a strong case that child labor policy should be a part of policy efforts to promote sustainable development without appealing to human rights issues, even though those issues can be important, right? He literally argues. You guys thought that we were going to come here and say like, oh, like poor children, it sucks that they have to be in the chimney, right? No, like it's being demonstrated by science over and over and over again, right? And this study is considered literally the best for this.
Okay, right, but I need his actual.
and
Could
that-
you
It's
give
not
me?
a very strong, like,
Eric
I have to
saying
look at the
you're
study
doing
right?
in detail.
you're
That,
doing a-
that
Wait.
it's for the good of an entire society, right? That child labor
Aristocracy.
laws be enacted, right?
Aristocracy. Listen,
That sounds like pretty
what I am doing-
weaselly
Wait,
language to
okay,
me.
one
Like,
second, one second.
child labor
Okay,
laws need
wait,
to be
wait.
part of a, like,
Okay, we gotta have one of you talk, Fabian or Leslie's.
one second. I'll be real quick, right? Number one, you keep calling me a liar by saying that I'm quoting Edmonds when I'm telling you that I'm quoting a different economist and a different study, and that I'm not quoting that I read
You quoted
studies.
Edmonds right
and
before him.
I quoted Edmonds in a different
Yes, you
one
did.
where I said that 73%
So you did
could be
quote Edmonds.
explained by variation in GDP.
So you did quote
But
Edmonds.
again,
Thank you.
that's not
Okay.
a quote. That is one study that I'm using. You were saying it to another. If you were confused in that,
No.
that miscommunication can be
No,
swept aside and we can understand that. The
Okay.
second thing is that I
So you
don't
did
want
quote
to
him.
hear,
That's what I was saying.
again, no, I
You
didn't
quoted
quote
someone
anybody.
that disagrees with your entire point and comes to the conclusion that we're correct. And
Right,
you're
because
incorrect.
here's
your
the funny thing. I'm not engaging in logical fallacies of appeal to authority. What I'm doing is I'm using data to support arguments that I'm making. It's called a deductive argument. What you're doing is saying
Nerd shit,
this
aka nerd
guy.
shit.
What you're doing is
That's
saying
not an
this
appeal to an
guy,
authority.
this guy says I'm right, therefore I'm right. And what I would like to do is I would like to hear you make an actual
No, I'm
deductive argument.
breaking down an argument that you used when you quoted him.
No, that's not what's happening.
Eris, what is okay? So he thinks that child labor laws are one of the things that are that help improve the child labor situation, along with other economic improvements.
Yes. which is
Why?
consensus.
What's the methodology? Like, why did he come to that conclusion?
I mean, it's mentioned extensively in the study. It's incredibly complex.
Well, if you read this study, well, you should be able to paraphrase it to us.
We got time.
I'm asking for
Why
your
are child labor laws?
Okay, I'll
plus
give you an
other things
example, right?
better than
One of the
just other things?
example, right, is that they actually made, and they enacted this law, I think, in the United States in the late 19th century, where they made it so that it was actually more expensive to hire children, right? And they did that, right, by when you hired adults, you had an adult got injured at the time, right? The adult was responsible for their own injury and their own health and their own care and all that stuff, right? So they made it that the company, whatever company that they're working for, the workforce is actually the company is actually responsible for the care of the child. So even though they could pay children less, it ended up being more expensive, and that was a consequence to leading directly, right, to making children just not as useful to hire anymore. Right, that's a child labor law.
Okay.
Okay, fine, but
It's
why?
This is
Well,
why
what's the
I'm
evidence that
shocked
that's
that
a
you guys
good
are against
thing?
child labor laws.
What's
Because
the
I could
evidence that
actually
helped?
argue
That
child
helped?
labor laws from an AnCap perspective. I mean, I'm not an AnCap, right? But I could actually just say that, like, that children should be able to work. They should be able to work in mills. They should be able to work in these really like nasty conditions, but they should they at least need to go to school 2 hours a day. Okay, that's a child labor law, something as minimum as that, right? So it's like I feel like just by agreeing to this debate, you guys like just set yourself up. I was completely shocked that you guys were so confident you were
But
just going to
you're
come
just
here and
describing
dominate.
laws. You're
No,
describing laws
you want to
that would
abolish
make it
these
harder to
laws,
hire
though.
children.
Describing
You want to
child
But you're
abolish
labor
not
these
laws.
explaining
minimum
why that's going to help.
protections.
Like
You want to
anything you
abolish these
do.
minimum protections. That's what you said. You said you want to
I'm not
abolish child
sure.
labor laws.
I'm not sure. I'm trying to actually pick up and read your study, but for whatever reason, the file seems to not work. I mean, you can see I'm doing it on stream.
Works for
I'm
everyone else.
downloading it.
If you disincentivize hiring children, yes, you will have less child labor, but you will also cause economic hardship for those families that depended on their children working, or those children that were depending on their jobs to work.
Give them
So
welfare.
what's the evidence
Give
that that's
them
going to be a
welfare.
net
Give them
benefit?
welfare instead. Easy, problem
But
solved.
these
Give
are
them
not
welfare.
places.
Keep
These
done.
places don't
That's
have
why
welfare.
it's
These are
always
poor
done
countries.
in
They
tandem
don't have
with
welfare. They
other
don't have public
economic laws. It
schools.
doesn't happen by itself,
Easy
right?
peasy.
You do it with welfare laws, or if you don't like welfare, then you could do
Right.
it with
Okay.
adoption laws.
So you
right?
have a
Like,
way
there are
to
plenty of
improve
laws.
the economy and make everyone richer. Why
Right,
is
the
it better
argument-
to also have child labor laws instead of
Okay.
just making the economy more
The
more
government
prosperous
gives
and
the
rich?
family some money, and the kid doesn't have to go work at the fucking mill and get their fingers cut off by some bullshit machine. Easy peasy,
Great.
problem
Go.
solved. End
Sounds
of
great.
debate.
Why would
Well,
so,
well,
so
see,
you
the
don't
problem-
need a child labor
so-
law to do that? You just
End
need to
of
make them
debate.
wealthy.
No, so here's
Tax rich
another thing.
people more. Easy peasy.
Right. So when you bring up like it's interesting that you bring up like textiles and you bring up like the cotton and things like that, because that is a very small minority of what child labor is. Right. The majority of child labor exists in agriculture and in the service industry. The highest country in the world in terms of percentage of child labor being done in manufacturing is India at 14%, and almost every other country is under 10%. Right. So I understand that you're targeting this specific type of child labor, but again, like it's really important that you
The
understand
child
that
labor
when
you would allow because
Also,
you would be
also
happy
the
with
most
that.
common employers
didn't
of
believe in the
children are their
law.
parents.
see the thing
Most
is
children
that
are employed by their parents.
right, and the thing is that agriculture has a higher rate of injury than does manufacturing, and agriculture is the most common form of child labor, right? So when you start doing things like, oh, we need to stop these children from working in sweatshops and create laws to do these things, again, even if they get legitimate child labor because it was targeted towards what you deem to be more dangerous, you're actually incorrect. It's agriculture that's the real problem here and not textiles, because the rate of injury in textiles is 9%. And funny enough, the rate of injury of a person on a football team in high school in America is 13.5%. Being in a local football team in America is more dangerous than working in a ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh, right? So again, these are good opportunities for children, and these are ways that children can improve their lives. And the fact of the matter is that the reason they do this is because they're poor.
Last username. Last username.
As well. Let's get rid of that too. It sounds dangerous. Get rid of that too.
Okay, last username,
More
right?
laws.
You brought up as a way to argue for your position that as a way to kind of like downplay the type of exploitative labor that these children go through, right? That it's usually being done by their parents. Children are usually employed by their parents, right? Which is, you're 100% correct on that. But children are on average abused the most by their parents. Do you know statistically who in relation rapes little girls the most?
Yeah, parents are a big source of abuse. Do you think
Their
that
fathers,
these children,
their fathers,
that these parents are making their
little girls the
children
most. Their
work
fathers are actually
as a
the
way to
majority of
abuse their
child
children?
pornography. The majority of child
Do you think the
pornography is
parents are
created by their
making?
fathers.
Do you think that the parents making their kids work is actually just abuse, like because they're mean, like dysfunctional parents?
Not
Or do you think
necessarily,
it's just because
but I think that there are
for
certain
economic
types of work that
reasons?
would be abuse.
So then, what's the point?
Therefore,
okay, maybe the
there are
parent is
certain
being-
types of work that would be abuse, right? So if they just say,
They're
I don't know,
unpleasant.
how
I acknowledge that.
like
I
help,
don't
if they
like
just
that
say
kids
like,
have to
hey,
work on
like
their parents'
help in the
farm to
store
survive.
after school or something, right? I wouldn't
if a kid
consider
has
that
to work-
abuse, okay? But if they're like, okay, work in our chimney, right? And work with all like the ashes from Chernobyl, even though you're probably gonna get some weird disease after. Okay, and we have 8 other children, which is pretty common in areas where child labor is a pandemic. I would consider that pretty abusive.
I don't think it's abuse if it's the best option available for the family and for the child. I don't think that's abuse.
But it's being demonstrated over and over again that it is not the best option available. We have
How?
other options.
You've yet to make an
feed-
argument on that.
We have,
Yeah, I've
we have
never
other
heard-
options to
Seen
feed
any demonstration of
children,
that.
right?
Maybe you should
Which
start
is-
listening
Other options to
rather than
feed
just
children.
talking all
What?
the time.
And if you do, great, then do it. But until it's done, don't sabotage them.
Right. It doesn't make any sense.
Like maybe
you're
there
not
is a way to
matching
make everyone
data.
rich. Sure, we could talk about that.
But they happy then.
but do that.
We've done it in the West. We
we have
demonstrated
done it in the
it.
West.
We've
We did,
lowered,
and-
we
and
reduced
child
child
labor
labor
and it's
laws-
happening. It's happening everywhere
and
else
again,
too.
the
Poverty is
data
going
has
away.
shown that child labor laws had little to no statistical difference.
I don't know why you say the
in
data
that-
when
in
the
that-
entire
I don't think that's
consensus
true.
disagrees
And
with you.
also,
it has been
compulsory
shown.
schooling.
It
You
has
would
been
know
shown.
schooling.
It has been shown that compulsory education laws, child labor laws, and minimum wage laws had little to no effect on child labor and rates of child labor. What has an effect on child labor is the amount of money that a person makes. So if we look at 2013 World Bank, if people make 600 to 2K, the child labor rate is roughly 34.04%. 2K to 6K, a little over 7%. 6K to 11K, a little under 5%. 11K to 24K, 0.16%. And when the average income of an adult is above 24K, it's 0.01%. The root problem
my
here
God.
is poverty.
Do you think that there's one solution for poverty?
I never said that there was one solution for
No.
poverty. Why would I think that?
Did I say that you said that? I'm asking.
Well, again, I said no.
Okay, so you don't, right? So
Mhm.
do you think that there could be multiple solutions to poverty that work together and that they have an entourage effect that
Sure.
when you put them
Absolutely.
together, they end up being stronger?
Absolutely.
So why do you think child labor policies can't be a part of that and can't be useful?
Because I
All of
haven't
the data
seen-
that
don't
have been
see
given
any,
you thus far. That's
don't
why.
see any logical or empirical reason.
But the experts
the
that
case.
go through these data that know
I
way
don't
more
want
than
an
any of
appeal
us
to
in this
authority.
room.
I just
That's
want a
not
good
an
argument.
appeal to authority.
You're
It's
doing
not
it
true.
to
The
your
experts
authority
didn't say
yourself
that.
on that
Appeal to
basis then, because
authority.
you're appealing to the authority of your studies.
You
You're
don't-
doing
you
the same
don't-
thing you're accusing us of. What are you
That's
talking
not
about,
what an
you
appeal
fucking
to
nerd?
authority is, Chud. You call me a nerd, but you're
You are.
honestly,
You're a
you're
nerd.
just like you're
It's
not
boring.
you're not able to keep up with aristocracy in the two of us. No, what I want to hear is an actual argument. When you say this expert says this in their conclusion of their study, what I want to hear is this data is the reason why this occurs, and then make an argument from it. I've
Okay,
yet
I
to hear
could
an
read,
actual
but I would have to
argument
read
from you.
the entire study. It's so complex.
Yeah, that's
really
what I
would.
did. We did
No,
research.
I would
we
have to
had
read the
data.
study on
We
here.
made
Obviously, I read
arguments.
the study when I was
You did
preparing for
research
this,
to argue for
right?
13-year-old
Do you want me to
strippers.
read the entire
Crazy.
study on stream? Does Dylan really want that? Dylan, is that what you want? You want me to read the entire study?
I just want you to
on
make an
stream?
argument.
No, we want you to
Wait.
read it off
Do you
stream
want
before
me-
the
people who
debate and then
dedicate
sound
their
on
entire
it.
life?
I've got a
Stop,
serious
stop,
point.
stop,
You
stop,
spend
everybody.
30
I got a
years
serious
of-
Everybody
point.
stop. Thank you. I don't care what I want. You can read what you want. You can make however arguments you want. I'm not going to advise you on what you should or shouldn't do. That's up to you.
Why do you want to
I
destroy
also
the
really
labor
don't
market?
want Chud to call me a nerd, okay? I'm trying to impress him here.
Why would I answer such a weird and loaded question?
Well, you know, if you've done all this fucking research and all these books, you should know.
I
What do you
should
think happens
know
if you
what
let
the fuck are you
child
talking
labor
about?
law? If you let child labor law start happening, what do you think happens to the employment market?
Well, again, like I showed in Costa Rica, right? The child
I don't
labor
care about
laws are
Costa
not.
Rica. I
I
don't care
know
about
you
Costa
don't
Rica.
care
Let's
about
talk
data.
about America. Let's talk about
Okay.
America. You want to
Awesome.
abolish child labor laws, correct?
In America?
Yes.
For different
Okay.
reasons. I mean, yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
So if
Because
you abolish
they're
child labor,
pointless.
no, listen. Receive mode on you. You've spoken enough, nerd. Shut up. Here's the situation. Okay, you allow a source of labor that is inevitably going to be cheaper to come to the fore in the labor market. What do you think companies are going to do? They're going to start employing
I'll answer that
cheaper
question
forces
for you.
of labor.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
go on.
gonna be
awesome.
cheaper and
It's
worse.
awesome. So there's this thing in the market where that used to happen, right? Thomas Sowell actually talked a lot about this. It was his first
Thomas
job.
Sowell. Okay.
And
yeah.
one of the things that he used to do when he was young to make a little extra cash is that he used to go into movie theaters, right? And he used to take people to their seat in a movie theater. And it was like this really cool thing. And it was a very cheap job. But once minimum wage laws came in, it was not actually child labor laws, but once minimum wage laws came in, what occurred was that job
So is
was
this
no
just
longer
an
economic.
anecdote? What happened to the studies? This is just an anecdote.
Okay.
Because
And
so now
more
I can
generally
only
speaking,
answer questions with studies now that you attack me for doing. So basically, no matter
Well, I think
what I
it
say, you're
demonstrates the
just going to
weakness of your
meme and
position.
yell and not
It's the
listen
weakness
to
of
me.
your position that you need to get a fucking Thomas Sowell and some job he did. I don't fucking care about any of that.
so in a free
Your
market,
point stands and is
Why do
correct.
you ask
children.
questions if you don't want to hear any answers and no answer is
Go on then, keep.
satisfactory?
I'll allow
Because you
you to
just want to
speak.
meme.
Go on.
Hold on.
I'll allow you to
Okay,
speak. Go on.
I want to address the appeal to authority thing. Like, first of all, I mean, you guys appeal to authority plenty of times. You literally did quotes, and then when Chud was like, "Who is this guy?" Okay, you're like, "He won a Nobel Prize." So, anyways, an appeal
was
to
a gift to you.
authority doesn't work. It doesn't work when you are appealing to an expert in the field that you are arguing, right? Anyways, in the study that I linked to, right? If you just skim through it, right, it also says that childhood labor was linked to poor public health, and children faced higher rates of accidents than adults in
Linked to.
industrial jobs. Child laborers were also shorter. They weighed less, even when compared to their counterparts that were in the same economic position as they were. Right?
None of this contradicts what we're saying. You're just saying child labor
How?
is bad. We agree. It is
We
bad.
agree.
It's not. That's
None
not
of-
the
yeah,
issue.
You
none
want
of
to
what you
remove all the
said-
safeguards that exist for child
The
labor.
issue is what do you do
You
about
want
it?
to allow it to happen. You just are. So
You
you're
want to
just
allow it to
saying,
happen more freely
No,
with
wanna
less
get rid of it.
regulation.
What we're saying is your solutions aren't helping. And if we
Yeah.
want to stop child labor, what we need to do is attack the actual problem. And instead, politicians want to make sweeping legislation and laws, and organizations want to work together to make laws. And often these have negative consequences that make the problem worse because they don't actually address the problem, which is education and poverty. And I know aristocracy is going to be like, but compulsory education is a child labor law. No, it's not. They're two different things. What I'm saying is that you actually need to solve the
not true.
problem, and that
We
child
get
labor
rid of
laws
child
do
labor
not
by
solve the
doing more
problem.
child labor. Yeah, that sounds intelligent.
Oh my God. Well, if you had
No
listened
response.
to
That's fine.
anything
No
that we had
response. I
So
get
said,
it. No
it's interesting.
response. I
It's
get it.
interesting that you guys
It's
like.
not- no
I remember
response.
when you guys agreed to this debate, I was like shocked. I was like, "This is crazy, right?" Because it's one of those truisms that everyone normally accepts. Okay, but I was intrigued, and I did some research, and I found out that there's actually a push by far right Republicans to resurrect child labor, right? And it's kind of based on like these two key myths that they have to do with history, right? Which I was like, "Oh my God, history! That's my thing. That's so cool." And first, it's like that markets, not the government, wiped out child labor in the early 20th century. And second, that child labor was beneficial to the children's quote unquote work ethic, okay, education and employment prospects. So the history of child
question.
labor belies these assertions, and their rise in high political circles threatens to resurrect a problem in the United States and has developed world largely eradicated a century ago. Right?
Quick question.
Yes.
You nailed me down in the beginning of the debate and forced me to use Google's definition of child labor. And so can you actually substantiate the claim that quote unquote far right people somewhere want to bring back labor for children that you said must be inherently exploitative? Or are you simply talking about youth unemployment and now you're switching the words when you get to talk about the baddies on the right?
I'm not switching the words. I'm using their words.
So they
right?
specifically
use the
say
term
we
child
want
labor because they are advocating specifically against child labor laws, right? Not youth employment laws. They're against child labor laws specifically.
Okay, so
I think child labor laws are bad, even in developed countries, and they're at the very least unnecessary and probably even destructive, because there's probably
Stephen Moore.
situations where it would be really good for kids to get a job. I mean, there's lots of jobs that kids get that we let them get, and it doesn't seem to shock anybody, right? We don't recoil in horror at a paper boy or a child actor or a lemonade stand.
Well, hang on a sec. If you want to talk about child actors, abuse in Hollywood is absolutely rife. Corey Feldman talked about his experience of abuse as a child actor. So, you want to make that easier by abolishing the labor laws that exist. So you were literally
so you're talking about
child labor laws that are stopping that
and sexual abuse.
That's not true.
It's a problem not just with children in Hollywood, but with adults as well. And it's bad.
That's not true.
And we're not proposing that you remove the laws about that.
Okay, what happens if you're in a situation? I'll pose a hypothetical, right? You're in a situation where, we really need people to crack open peanuts, okay? And children are particularly good at cracking open peanuts. Okay? And it's really cheap to hire children, right? Because they don't need to fully earn their keep and all of that stuff, so you can pay them half as much. So, and everyone's really obsessed with peanut butter because we eradicated like a peanut allergy. So it's like a huge industry, and they start hiring, and then suddenly almost like most children, or say 60% of children, right, are literally being hired to crack these peanuts. Okay. And the only skill that they develop is how to like really gnarl the teeth on the peanut. Right. And do you think that's good for
Using their
society?
teeth?
Wait, do you think that's good for that? What do you think is going to happen to that
I feel like
country,
that's bad
right?
for society
that has
because
an
we're all
entire
going to get
community
sick from gross children putting their mouths on peanuts. I feel like we're all going to get sick. Like the FDA would have to step in at some point and stop
Well,
this if they're
obviously,
using their teeth.
in this world,
Do you
germs
support the
don't
FDA as an
count.
AnCap?
No.
No.
Okay.
FDA's
Well
killed
then that would have to
tens
go,
of
wouldn't it?
thousands
With
of
your
people.
ideal society, the FDA would be gone, so that would be a problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, there would be rating
I've
agencies.
seen your
Why are you
ideal
using the
society.
FDA as a point? Like
I've
you don't
seen
even
it.
want the
I've
FDA to
played Rust,
exist
and it's
because you're an idiot.
horrific.
So the
You've
salaries of
played
children
Rust.
in a labor market, in a free labor market, are determined the same way as the salaries of adults. They tend to get paid less only because children tend to be worse workers, right? They're kind of immature. They don't have a lot of skills, not very reliable and disciplined. So they're going to tend
Here's
to
the
be
other
paid a
great thing
little
for
bit less.
companies. Children cannot
But-
advocate for their own experience and for their own labor rights as adults can.
No,
so
but their
abuse would
parents
be
can.
absolutely right.
Children can't
What
do
if
a
the
lot of
parents
things.
don't
Children
bother?
can't take care of themselves. So
Sure, but
that's
you know,
why
you're
we have
sending your kid
people
off
take
to
care of
fucking,
them.
the peanut factory or whatever it is. The parents not going to be there. They're trusting the company to do the right thing. There's no law to stop the company from treating the
I don't
kid
think
badly.
you should be able to hire a child without telling their parents. You should still have to get parental permission to hire children.
Yeah, but then you could they could get hired at like a factory or something, and there's nothing that the parent's not there, so the parent's not going to know what's going on at the factory. There could be abuse that's engaged.
I mean, if they
in.
care, I assume they'll try to find out.
But now you're
What if they don't? But what if they
so
don't?
here's the-
There's
so-
no
Well,
law
the
to
same.
stop
You could say the
that.
same thing about school. The parents don't see what happens at school. They could just be like
There's very
torturing
strict
those kids.
legislation that exists at school to safeguard
And there's strict
children.
rules about workplace safety and not torturing your workers.
Well, see, here's the
Okay,
funny
but
thing,
children
right?
can't
So-
advocate for themselves in the same way as adults can in a workplace. Whereas
Why
in
not?
schools,
They go home and they're like, "Mommy, Daddy, I don't like my job because it's painful." Like, of course, why wouldn't they?
What if mommy and daddy are like, oh, we've got 7 more children. Okay, go
Yeah.
to work because we really
yeah,
need that paycheck.
you're making this point that they have to go for poverty. Well, if they have to work there and it's essential for the family to survive, then the family is not going to care that they're getting abused. They're going
Well,
to
hold
send
on.
them
Are we
next day to
talking
do the money.
about?
That's your
Okay,
fucking
first
We're
point.
of
talking
all-
about rich countries.
Untie
or
yourself
poor
up.
countries?
Unlucky. Untie that.
Oh my God. Jesus Christ, Judd. So in this scenario where child labor laws we're comparing it to this ideal type where child labor laws work. We've already shown you that the child labor laws aren't doing anything, right? Child labor laws in Costa Rica, for example, again, like I said, 43% of everyone that is a child working in Costa Rica is illegally working against child labor laws. So what you're describing is the perfect versus
You
your
want to get rid
worst
of child labor
example.
laws in America as well, you said. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what I've described could happen, and there'd be no law to stop that from happening, would there?
There are tons of horrible things that happen in workplaces now. The difference here is that a
Unfortunately,
child
there's no
has the
there.
ability. The difference here is that a child has
It's not
one
considered
or
then.
two parents that advocate for their rights. Other people advocate for their own rights. Do you think worker exploitation
But you
doesn't
just
occur
made
in
the
the
point-
America? Aren't you a socialist? Like, don't you believe in all of this
Made the
worker
point that the
exploitation
kids
everywhere?
have to go to work because their family's poor. If their family's poor, there's a perverse incentive to keep sending the kids to the workplace, even if they're getting abused.
Which is
It's
why
perverse
this doesn't make
incentive.
sense to talk about it in terms of America, because even if we got rid of child labor laws in
You wanna
America,
get labor-
there would
but
be
you wanna get
almost
rid of labor
no
laws in
child
America.
labor. Even if
Well,
we
how do you
did,
know
there would
that?
still
Okay, wait.
because of all of the
wait,
studies that you said were too fucking boring.
Wait, I just want to tell you guys, we got about like 15 minutes left max. I just want to let everybody know that. So if there's any arguments you wanted to throw on the table, just giving you that warning.
Okay, look.
Yeah, go on.
As far as the developed world's concerned, there may be bad parents who make bad decisions for their kids, right? If you're a child and your parents are bad parents, that really sucks for you. Your life is going to be screwed up in all sorts of ways.
Unlucky. Get down to the factory and get those fucking shoes made, you little brat. I don't
Your
care if
life's
you're getting
gonna be
raped by
screwed
the
up in all
boss.
sorts
Get on
of
with
ways.
it.
Because kids, all sorts of decisions have to be made for kids. What they're going to eat, where they're going to go to school, what friends, what they're going to do, who friends they're going to hang with. So if your parents are bad at making decisions for you, you're going to have a tough life. I don't see any particular
It's tough if you're
reason that
getting
we need
raped
to
by your boss,
make
but
this
okay.
decision, this particular decision for all parents, no matter what. I don't see why we should take this particular
Well,
decision
let
out
me-
of the
yeah.
hands of parents. We let
Okay.
parents make all
Well,
sorts of other
listen.
decisions,
I'll be
and we
real
hope that generally, we assume that generally parents are most likely to make the best choices for their kids.
Right.
But
This
we don't
is the
care about
problem.
the parents that are making
Chad,
the
real
best
quick.
choices. Go on.
Chad, look, the problem here is that you're taking an extreme, which is an abusive bad parent, right? And what
We have to
we're
deal with
trying
the
to just but what we're trying to explain to you is that obviously there are abusive parents. There are ways to
Sure,
stop
the laws
abusive
for-
parents,
Laws
right?
that stop abusive
Nobody
parents.
is
They're to stop abusive parents, not good parents.
Chud, for once in your fucking life, take
Sorry,
the
but you
cotton
just
balls
go
out of
on
your
and
ears
on.
and
You just go
listen.
on and on. Okay, I'm
No,
listening. I'm
you're just
listening.
yelling
Go
every
on.
time
I allow
I
you
say
to speak.
something.
I allow you to
No,
speak. Please
listen.
continue.
When the problem with using an extreme example of parents that are abusive to children is that you ignore the actual causes of child labor laws throughout the entire population. And the reason what we're saying is that child labor laws push children that are working predominantly. Yes, there are abusive parents that will take advantage of whatever situation they can to harm their children. We have to figure out ways to stop that. But the
Yeah, like laws.
overwhelming,
Laws are a good way of stopping that, right?
Jesus Christ, Chud. The overwhelming majority of people, what happens when child labor laws are initiated in these situations where they're doing this because of poverty, is that they end up in the black market. They get sold into prostitution. They end up in jobs that are more dangerous and with less regulations, that are not enforced by contract, that are not enforced by, you guessed it, laws, because we're not advocating of getting rid of all laws. We're advocating for getting rid of child labor laws.
Wait,
Yeah,
are there
exactly.
any laws? Are there any laws that you believe in?
We believe in natural law philosophy, contract law, volunteerism. We believe in parental guardianship. We believe in the right to freedom of association. We believe in the right of freedom of movement.
Like, are there any kind of laws? Like, give me an example of a law, like a specific law.
Let's not get distracted.
No, it's not. It's connected. Okay, your guess murder, right? But don't people just murder? Plenty of people will still murder if it's against the law.
That's actually our argument about child labor, is that plenty of people will still put their children in child labor, like 43% of the child labor workforce in Costa Rica.
When I quoted your argument, I didn't quote it because it was a good one. I quoted it to make fun of it because it's a really bad one.
Oh, okay.
It's actually not wrong because murder is not something that people need to do or really want to do most of the time, right? Most people don't want to murder anyway. So you can make murder illegal and you don't end up with this massive black market for murder. But child labor in a place where the economy depends on children being able to work, you can't just make it illegal and expect it to go
necessary.
away.
I don't think that families should have to rely on child labor to survive. I don't think that they should. I think that there should be. We should set up.
Why do you think they're working?
No.
That's the point. You're saying more child labor is going to solve this. What I'm saying to you is that what would be better is to set up situations where families are provided for by the state so they don't have to worry about sending their kid off to potentially get raped by their boss.
There you go.
ChudLogic.
Congratulations. You finally joined the conversation, right? And that is the entire point of what we're saying is, while I probably disagree with your solutions, you're finally talking about solutions that could affect child labor as opposed to the ineffective child labor laws. I appreciate that you finally come over to our side and you understand that the issue isn't child labor laws, but it's poverty in those situations.
That's a very clever trick you're trying to do, but I'm not on your side at all.
It's not a trick.
I'm not on AnCap.
It's not a trick. Like, you just walked into it. It might not be what you meant to communicate. I don't know. Maybe you're just like word vomiting, but you now understand the real problem.
Accuse me of that. All you've been doing is word vomiting all fucking panel. It's boring as fuck. Jesus. Studies, data. Listen, kids shouldn't have to work. Simple as. Enough said.
I agree. They shouldn't.
They shouldn't have to, but that's not what we're arguing.
But all of the arguments, there are some arguments that you guys provided that were pretty good, but they can be used against the laws that you believe in, right? Like murder laws. Or I'm assuming you guys believe in child abuse laws, right?
I don't think that's true. I don't think a murder is an essential part of any economy.
Wait. Okay. Do you guys believe in child abuse laws?
Do we believe that it exists? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Wait, do you believe that it's a useful tool to reduce child abuse?
That what is?
Do you want child abuse laws against child abuse?
Yeah,
I do.
This isn't complicated.
No, I was just I just couldn't quite understand what you were asking.
So if you're against like all the arguments that you were just bringing up, right, would also be good arguments against any form of law that protects children, like a child abuse law.
No, because child abuse it's not something you need to do, right? You don't. Your economy doesn't depend on child abuse. The welfare of a family doesn't depend on child abuse, but it might depend on child labor.
It can't. Okay,
Child abuse
welfare
is
of a
not going to be the
family,
best
the
option for
welfare
a
of
child.
a,
but
you have never
working might.
demonstrated that the welfare of a family actually depends on abusing that child.
If it
Which
doesn't,
is
then
child
why are
labor.
they doing it? Why are they doing it? Do you like? This is what I was saying in the beginning. Do you
Wait,
think that
do
these
you
parents
think
just
people are
hate their
rational
kids, or they're
actors
just
and
they're just
moral? Do you
stupid,
think
and then
all
that's why they're
people are
making the kids
rational
work?
and moral actors?
I think that I trust a parent's choice for what to do better than someone from a completely different part of the world at a completely different wealth level making laws without really knowing how that economy works. Okay, I think the people living there who care about their own kids probably are the best people to make that
Well,
decision.
those are feelings that you have,
They
and they're
might be
not
wrong, but they're
actually
probably
substantial
right.
or demonstrated by
I just
science or any kind
So
of
do you have science that
any kind of
demonstrates
consensus.
that the American politicians are and the trade laws that they create have a better understanding of the welfare and needs of Bangladeshi children in
Wait, when did I
Bangladesh and
bring
their
up
parents?
Americans? I'm not American. When did I bring up like American lawmakers?
Okay, well, how about UK or wherever it is that you are from that is engaging in child labor laws and in terms of their import export trade laws, tariffs, and things of that nature? Can you demonstrate that they have a better understanding than the parents of those children in Bangladesh? Because you said
The
it was against science, so I'm just
the
curious.
thing is, a lot of the thinkers, right? A lot of the thinkers that come to these conclusions are actually often from the communities in which child labor is being
Yeah,
perpetuated, like in
I'm asking
Bangladesh,
for data,
right?
not standpoint epistemology. I don't want your Marxist philosophical drivel. I want an
Like,
actual argument.
I'm not a Marxist. I'm a monarchist. So
Yeah,
I
but
don't
you're
know what you're
using
talking about.
standpoint epistemology, which comes from critical theory. It's fine. I want an actual argument or
I'm just
data
saying,
or
if you
science.
believed epistemology and actual studies and consensus, you would
Wait a
not be an
second though.
ANCAP.
You just wait a second. You just said, right, why is it someone from the other side of the world is deciding what's best? And Eris is responding to that by saying it's people from within these communities that make this point, and then you're complaining about standpoint epistemology. Well, which
I'm
is it?
talking
Are
about
these people
parents
no,
of their
Dave,
children,
is this
not about
perspective relevant or
cultures and
not?
ethnicities.
Because they're within the fucking community. You're just dismissing it offhand when actually you just made a point that suggested you wanted to hear more from the perspective of the people there.
I know you have a difficult time with this, so follow me real quick. There's a difference between a
try. How
parent
long's it gonna
and a
take?
child, and the child is the individual we are talking about, and the economic circumstance is the one they are currently living in, right? Versus either a politician
Another
in
long one.
another country from a different position, or even a researcher that we're appealing to because they happen to come from this community. It is not the same as the individual choices of the parent and the child and the bond and the relationship that they have.
But the problem you're missing is that if a parent is in abject poverty, they may not make the best decisions for the best outcome of their child. And without
Absolutely.
labor laws, right, that act
The
against the
parents
perverse
won't make the
incentive,
best
they could
decisions,
send.
so the governments will step in and make the right decisions for you.
Yeah,
And one
absolutely.
decision
That has
for
to happen
everybody. That's
sometimes.
the
That
problem,
has to
right?
happen.
You're just
Yeah,
making
that has
one
to happen
huge sweeping
sometimes.
decision.
Yeah, of course.
You're saying it's
I mean,
always wrong.
Well, no, what I'm saying to you is that there has to be limits in place. And when it comes to the protection of children, I think an abundance of caution is necessary, just like with age of consent laws, right? I think it's important to have a line and we say,
Okay.
right, that's the line that we've best established. Okay.
Well,
and
sure.
we're going to stick with that. And,
But our line
there
is
might
I mean, a
rational,
good
and yours
line
isn't.
might be abuse, right? If you're doing something that like hurts your kid for no reason, that's illegal. But we have laws like that. We have laws against child abuse.
But if
So
they
what
if
I'm
they have
saying
good
to you-
reason, wait, if they have good reason, you could hurt them.
If you have good reason that your kid has to do something that's unpleasant, like working on the farm to allow a subsistence farm to subsist, then I would not call it abuse. No, I don't
I
think
just
there
have a
should be a
quick
law
question:
against that.
am I the only parent here?
I'm a
Aristocracy, do you
parent
have
as
children?
well.
You a parent?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
I have
I just
a
curious.
dog. So
Okay,
yes.
yeah, not pet parents. Come on, real parents. So you have children, right?
That's offensive.
So
Yeah, I
you
do. They're at
Chud,
school.
right? That's not offensive. Get the fuck out of here. It's totally different. Now, so you have children, right? Do you really legitimately believe that the state has a better understanding of what is important for your children than the love and the care and the attention that you have for your child? Do you legitimately
Um,
believe that?
Yeah, but that's not the case for everyone. Whilst I think, but then I, align with the idea they should go to school. They need to focus on their schooling. A job could just be a distraction from that. I think an important education is a really good foundation for a good existence in life, and that's why it's so important that kids have like compulsory schooling and they're prevented from working, which again goes against the perverse incentive that poor families would have to send their kids out to work rather than send them to school.
Right, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking if you believe with certain policies that the state is enforcing currently. What I'm asking is, do you trust yourself more or a politician more to know what's right for your children? I'm just curious.
I don't
Do you
look at
think-
it like that. It doesn't matter what I'm looking at it from the broad societal perspective, that there are some parents that will do the right thing and some parents that will do the wrong thing. And some parents would
accuse me of
send
a
their
lot of
children
pivoting.
to work.
Wait,
Can
the
you answer
argument
the
that you're
question?
providing is an argument against any form of child abuse law, right? Like, because I'm assuming, Fabian, you're
No,
a
I'm
really
not.
good dad, okay? I'm just going to assume that, right? You seem like a nice guy, okay? So you're probably not abusing your child. You're probably a really good father to them, right? Does that mean that we shouldn't have child abuse laws? Right? Does
No.
that mean
Should
that,
have
Why would I
child
say
abuse
that we
laws.
as a society could
We
say there
never
are
said
some people
anything
that are
against
bad
child
parents,
abuse laws.
so there are at least some limits? So
Aristocracy.
that's all a child
I really
that's
would
all a
appreciate
child
it.
labor law is. That's all a child labor does.
You gave me, listen, you gave me the respect to say that I'm probably a good father. So give me just a little bit more respect and stop straw manning my argument. Right? We're not arguing against child abuse laws. There's a rational difference between these two things. Right? We've brought up several reasons why there's a rational difference. What we're saying
I'm
is
not
that
strawmanning
they're
you. Just
yes,
demonstrating that your argument is fallible because it can be used, okay, against things that you also believe in.
no, we
I know
can't
that you
because
believe in child abuse laws.
there's absolutely different rationales between those two things. And I set up an entire
But
framework
just because it's more
of
common
libertarian.
or it creates more economic use?
You might have been lost in the sauce when I was saying it, right? But I gave you an entire explanation of libertarian philosophy
Okay.
and the rights of children, right? I'm not going to go over that again because I know it'll blow ChudLogic's brain.
Do you think children can be abused without them being aware they're being abused?
Absolutely.
Okay, so a child could be in a workplace and be taken advantage of and being abused and might not be aware of it, okay? Especially if they're younger.
Absolutely.
Right? So the point there is that if a family is poor, they may disregard any abuse they're receiving, or they may not even know about it because the child isn't voicing it. So that's why a child labor law is important in order to prevent that situation from occurring in the first place.
Right,
See?
but the
Parents probably
problem
didn't have an
is that we're
education
very
because
simply-
child labor
No,
usually
no,
leads to
no,
low
pause.
education.
No.
Wait. I can't. I have no clue what was just said. Okay, who was asking a question? Can they restate it because I didn't even hear it?
Chud was asking me a question.
Okay, Chud, ask the question, and then Fabian will be the one that responds. Nobody else.
Okay, it's really simple, right? Do you have to go over it again, or do you remember, Fabian?
No, I remember. The problem
Okay,
here
cool.
is that you're equating you slip a few pieces of logic, and I understand you don't like nerd shit. But the problem is that you insert child labor law as a reason, but none of your evidence has actually demonstrated why child labor law is necessary. What all your evidence does is support why child labor in manufacturing and in dangerous jobs and in jobs that can be exploitative is bad. That is not the argument. We have said multiple times that we don't like exploitative child labor. What we are saying is that child labor laws are not an effective means of stopping it, and that often they have negative consequences that can be worse for the parents and the children involved.
Well,
If you're
Like,
desperate enough,
right?
if you're in a
That there's
desperate
a- that there's a
situation,
larger-
you could allow your child
But
to
it's a
be
lesser evil,
abused
right?
by their employer. Or more simply, if you're in a desperate situation, you could allow yourself to be abused by your employer.
So
That
would you
tends
be
to
happy
happen.
with an
A
employer
good way to
abusing their
prevent
kid
that is
if it
to
was
have
necessary?
employment standards.
Would you be
legal
happy
standards
with an
for safety
Would you
in the
be happy?
workplace?
Would you be happy with an employer abusing a kid if it was the right outcome for the betterment of the family?
I don't see how that's the right outcome.
I'm not a
Like,
consequentialist. I'm not a lefty, so no. It's that simple.
there are things that employers shouldn't do to you because there's no reason that it doesn't,
what if they
doesn't
do?
make you more productive to abuse you in that way. And we have laws
what if
about
But
workplaces
if, like,
being
they
safe
film it
and,
and it's
and the
profitable
way
for some
employees
years
are
online.
treated to prevent that.
But you
And
realise your position.
you can,
of
but
getting
you
rid
only
of
get the
labour
benefit of
laws
those
will
laws
you'll
if you have a
create more of
legal
these
job.
situations. You'll create more of these situations where children are being abused in the
No,
workplace.
you
and
create
because of a
those
lack of
situations.
You
limitation.
created those
Because if
situations.
you
and we
drive
proved
child
that.
labor underground,
Not at all.
they don't get that protection. That's how they can
But-
get abused.
but
Oh, sorry.
time
Is
and
there
time
loads
Then
of
they have
underground
no
child
way
labour
of
in
getting any
America? I
legal
don't see
help.
it. Where's all the
Employers
underground
mistreat
child
them.
labour happening in America? That's this bad.
Again, if you had listened at all during this debate, you would understand that once people start making over $10,000 income per person, child labor essentially disappears regardless of child labor laws. It goes down to
Okay,
0.
but then what you're doing is you're setting children up. But the problem is with your approach is you're setting children up to not make that much because they're not getting an education, they're not going to get a good job, and they're going to be trapped in a cycle of poverty. So your solution of just solving child labor by doing more child labor creates a perpetual cycle of poverty.
Actually, that's not what the data shows at all. The majority of individuals that work in child labor markets
like to make it
throughout
sound smart, like it's like the data like completely disagrees with you. The studies disagree with you.
Well,
right? The people that you quote
you've
disagree
yet
with
to
you.
actually show any data throughout this
Yes, I
entire
have
time.
shown. You
You've
just
just
don't like to read
quoted.
it.
You've just
Okay.
quoted conclusions
Okay.
from research.
We got to wrap this up. You'll both be given a period of time to do ending statements while I talk to the judges and we figure out who is the inaugural Hippy Dippy Tag Team Champions, HDC Tag Team Champions. We're going to first give it to Toontown since we allowed Market Justice Warriors to open up the first time.
Okay.
Chud, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think their flustering speaks for itself. Their positions end up with more kids getting abused, but they're AnCaps. What do you expect? That's it.
Okay. So, you could really see the core of the argument, particularly even though we demonstrated that there has been historical consensus, scientific consensus, who have gone through all of the data instead of cherry picking specific instances, right? The way someone like Gwyneth Paltrow cherry picks the instance where this weird stone putting in her vagina fixes her cancer, right? It's all of those things. That's not how data is analyzed. That's not how scholars come to conclusions, right? They go through all of this, right? They're obviously experts on the subject, and they come to these conclusions. And we can read these studies ourselves. The one particularly that I linked, right, by the guy you quoted, Edward, right? Like it was pretty obvious by what you said. And just in general, there are when it comes down to it, it really feels like this is an argument about freedom, right? You kept honing down on this emotional argument about what a parent cares about their child, and they're going to be picking what's right, because I think that you're imagining the situation where your child is sitting there starving, right? And they're about to die, but if you let them just work in that mill that day, they're not going to die. And so you're going to pick the lesser evil. That is not on average the situations that these people are in. We have come further as a society, right? We have thought of other solutions to poverty, right? There are plenty of other solutions. And this is one of those solutions because it creates long-term economic growth and allows children to escape the cycle of poverty by putting the majority of their time in education, right? Instead of skills like being able to piece out their nuts like with their teeth. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Now I'm throwing it over to Market Justice Warriors.
I'm a little bit meaner in the way that I do these things, so I'll go first and let the nice guy go last username. So what we heard was Chud make memes the entire debate and not actually intellectually engage with anything that we said and just lie about everything. And aristocracy, okay. And so can I have my closing statement? Can you shut up? So anyways, but aristocracy, I kind of feel bad for you because Chud really... So anyways, I kind of feel bad for you because I feel like Chud really like swamped you down and it was kind of a 2-on-1 in terms of data. Unfortunately, I didn't hear a lot of arguments from you. What I heard was what you're accusing me of, projecting, which is appeal to authority. What you were doing is you were saying, well, this person and the community agrees to these things, right? And unfortunately, what we're doing is not cherry picking data. What we're using is looking at actual research and making arguments to support, using this to support arguments that we're making, such as, the fact that in 1800, 1900, 1910, the child labor laws had no effect on child labor. We had, World Bank information. And of course, one of the big sources that you wanted to claim was the ILO. You made me Google things. And again, it proved my point. And so I think it's very clear from the argument that we've made that while none of us here really like child labor, the fact that we want to institute these laws, really, it just comes from a place of privilege, and it comes from a place of misunderstanding, and it comes from a place of not really doing the research when it comes to economics, as has been proven. And, the best thing for these people is sometimes stuff we don't like. And the best thing we can do to fix those things is fix the economic conditions. And I just didn't, we barely heard a little bit of an argument from Chud at one point that finally addressed the topic. And he came over to our side, and I appreciate it.
And Eris, we appreciate, thank you for bringing a study and some argument, but you didn't really, all I heard was a conclusion from the study, and the conclusion didn't even sound like it was very confident in the concept that the child labor laws were actually important. It was really hedging that on child labor laws and this other stuff has to be part of a package of blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's not just based on that. It's not very convincing. I'll take a look, but what we really need to hear is methodology that actually explains, actually establishes the labor laws themselves as the as the cause of the improvement. We gave you a study that refutes that shows that the laws didn't correlate with the improvement, and that defeats that concept, that premise. So that's the problem. I'll take a look at the study. Maybe it says more, but I don't think there's any. You guys have any argument here?
Okay. Thank you both for participating in the first ever Hippy Dippy championship tag team match. I am waiting for all of the judges to respond, and then we're going to have the first ever tag team champions. You can talk freely if you.
Oh, now we can talk freely. What were we doing before?
Yeah,
nothing
right.
to say. I'm bored. I'm bored of this. Come on, what's going
Too
on?
bad your avatars don't have crocodile tear support. That would really help your.
I do have tears.
The
Right?
only crying I heard was from you nerds.
Also, Chad, who do you think
I
won?
do have tears when I think about, like, if we lose this, that means that, like, there's literally going to be children being exploited all over the world. Like, the stakes are so high. People think this is just some Twitch debate.
Eris,
Well,
we're
I would-
streamers.
you know, Eris,
Wait. We're streamers. We exploit children all the time. We take their money.
Right,
True.
right. But
Mentally ill
aristocracy,
children too.
aristocracy.
Speak for yourself. My audience is very old, okay?
I think and I think the exact opposite. I think we put out a very well convincing data supported argument that shows that if we keep pushing these child labor laws, what you're actually going to have is situations similar like in Bangladesh where children were sold into sex trafficking and prostitution.
This is the thing.
because of
The dirty secret is that
If
the
you got all
experts
this
have
data,
learned
why does
what
no one
we're
take
saying.
AnCaps seriously?
And that's
Why
why
does
you
no one
only
take
see
AnCaps
the labor
seriously if you
laws
got all
come
this
up.
data? AnCaps are a
They're
joke.
not necessary.
Everyone considers them a joke. They're the biggest joke ideology in the entire fucking political spectrum. Okay,
And jokes is all you have
Better at
because we're
debating than
right.
you are.
and autism's all you've got.
Have you ever played
I
Rust?
don't even know if you can say that.
I've not actually played Rust. And,
Okay,
but
I
you know
genuinely
what?
think
You
you
know
should play
what?
Rust. I love Rust, right? I feel like I would really enjoy an AnCap society. I'm not going to lie to you, right? But it would turn me into a terrible
be great.
person. I've seen it.
It would be great.
I've
It would
seen
be
it happen
beautiful.
in real
Better
life.
health,
better
better
person.
outcomes, better rights, better business, better
It brings
technology.
out,
Turn you to-
it brings out pure
When you have
evil.
responsibility, real
Okay.
responsibility for the society you live in, turn you into a
We
good
got a response. We got the judges' votes, and it is a split decision from the judges. A split decision.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Now, first, I want to say that, of course, the vote is for fun, and it does not dictate who is right or wrong on any issue. People know how this show works, and it's not an endorsement by me of whatever the position that wins, and I have to say that multiple times now, okay? So, the first vote is from the celebrity guest judge, Real Ranton, who voted for the Market Justice Warriors. I believe they made the better argument. The second vote is from Danabo, who voted for Toontown. And the last vote is from my favorite editor, Mr. Geek. And it's for, I'm sorry, it's just so hard to read. Sorry, I think there's a smudge on my screen. Yeah. Man, it's really on there. I can't.
This feels like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? Like,
Yeah. So Deal or No Deal, actually.
oof.
It's so hard to read that mark. Oh, it's for Toontown is the winners of the Hippy Dippy Championship
It was
tag
obvious.
team.
It was
I like
obvious.
Dylan how you're more embarrassed that cartoons won than AnCap.
It was obvious.
Right?
Let's be real.
Well,
no one's interested in that nerd shit.
Well, I'm embarrassed because I don't think you should have won. But anyway, you guys are the first ever tag team champions. Congratulations on being the first ever tag team championship belts. Getting them, we'll be shipping them out to you. We'll have them in 3D format to be sent to you guys. Congratulations.
Hey, maybe one day we can have a rematch and they could present at least one good argument. Because they didn't have any
Damn.
today.
You want to get blown out again? Let's fucking go.
Yeah, I don't know.
ChudLogic, you are a rock dragging down Eris for the entirety of the conversation.
I think Eris should get both belts.
Eris should
I
get
really
both
do,
belts.
yeah.
I think
I mean,
chat
if
speaks
they're
for
gonna
itself.
win, which obviously, you know, like let's be honest, we know you
Like
guys
you,
didn't
like
win.
like
But
Chud,
if
like
they're gonna win, you know, Eris should get both belts because Chud was really dragging her down.
How much,
did we do
how much
wrong? Should
research
we have,
did you
like,
do for this to
dabbled
just
and-
lose?
No,
How
you
much
know why
research
he
did you
dragged me
guys
down?
do?
Because he made me laugh so hard that I was like dying the whole time. Like I almost fell off my chair in the beginning.
to be
Seems
clear,
shit, even more.
I want to be honest. If I was the judge, I would have given it to them. I'm just gonna be honest.
Dylan, no one gives a shit what you think. Shut the fuck up, okay?
I get.
It's his show.
You know what? I
Oh, shit.
recalibrated the votes. Actually, it
You know,
seems
Dylan,
that
it's
one
your
of them-
show. You can do whatever you want.
That is true. I could do
Okay.
whatever I want, Chud.
Well, I mean, listen, mate. Everyone's seen what's happened, so if you want to change it because I've insulted you, so be it.
Eris is the new tag team champion. Congratulations. The first ever and probably only tag team champion. Congratulations, Eris. That's a mighty
Oh,
victory
shit.
for you.
Thank you.
There you
I
go.
like my dog.
2-on-1. You won 2-on-1, right?
Wow. That is a
Even
mighty-
worse.
I would
You're a
love
pansy. You're a
I'd love
chud
to,
penalty.
I know. I would love to hear an argument from you, like a good one. But you did win 2-on-1, and that's an impressive feat.
I gotta be
Thank you.
honest. I'm gonna make the Market Justice Warriors active in the tag team division because I want them to go for the belts again because I think I just
You should have a little talk with your judges, Dylan.
I should have a little talk with my judges, actually. But I appreciate you guys for coming on and doing
Absolutely.
this and arguing for a position that I know is going to give you a lot of shit. And I know you got a lot of shit. And I know half the people who said you lost in chat just said it because they disagree with you.
Well, also, we tried a ton of different debate topics, and Chud would only pick one that made AnCaps look really, really bad. Like we even tried to throw them selling kidneys on the open market, and he didn't think that he could make AnCaps look bad enough with that. And so over and over and over again, we had to keep trying to find a topic until it got to child labor laws, which is one he thought he could win. And apparently he was right. It doesn't actually matter if you make a good argument or not. It only matters that child labor law is just something people like.
So I'm going to send the belts out to the new champions. Congratulations, Aristocracy. Thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say?
I really resented the part where my parenthood of my dog, was downplayed and acted as if that, is not as meaningful as a relationship with a child. So that's all I'm saying.
Wonderful.
Very hurtful. My
I'm
dog
not
is very friendly.
sorry.
Would you make your dog get a job? I'd make my cat
Yes,
get a
but that's
job.
because she's a working dog. So
Thank
it's
you.
fine.
Okay. So is it different or is it same? I have a working
That's
child.
part of her definition. She has to.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. We're now going to go to the announcers for a short period of time, and then we're going to go to the main event that you all been waiting for, Destiny versus CTV. And I will also probably call you guys in private after this, my Libertarian friends. So love you all. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what a match. My God. What did you guys think of that? Was that a good inaugural Hippy Dippy Tag Team Championship match or what?
That was a good inaugural match.
This is the
would
first time
say-
I've actually disagreed with my judges. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately, because I do agree with Chud and Eris more. It's just that they didn't have as strong arguments. I thought that they had a couple of moments where they were starting to gain some momentum, but ultimately they didn't deliver in the way that I wanted them to,
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just that I felt like, and the thing is, there was like a slam dunk I felt like that the Toontown could have used, and that was when they said it only increased like people going to school by 7%. They should have just bit that and said, okay, so it increased it by 7%, so it does help.
Right.
But instead, they just maneuvered around that and started arguing other positions, and I felt like, honestly, if ChudLogic would have been more in his game, it would have been probably a lot closer, in my opinion, and I think they would have probably won. But ChudLogic was just holding their team down the whole time, and the insults and that is all fine, but it felt like it was like insults and like very few arguments.
I have to disagree a little bit. I think that Chud's package in those red bikini briefs brought a lot to the table, Dylan. I think you're kind of discounting that a bit.
Chud made it fun, but that you can make it fun and also have a good argument.
Listen. Chud was wronged here. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that he was wrong. Yeah, because he's right. Data is boring. Studies are boring, and I'm getting my PhD, and I will admit that data and studies are boring. This is a Friday night debate panel with belts involved, bro. If I wanted to hear data, I'd go fucking listen to a dissertation. And I think that he was completely wronged here. I think that he was right to call out and yawn at them and shit. And in fact, I was yawning listening to their outros the entire time. Resident sleepers. That's my take.
Listen, I'll agree. I think that if you can like come to a debate with just an abstract, just like you just have to read the abstract and the conclusion, and you could probably get by on that. I don't like all this like bullshit about asking people for their what is the methodology of that. That's some fucking academic shit. We're on fucking Twitch. Very fucking true. But
you can have a little bit more than it's just not tonight.
Yeah. I think
you should be discussing more from like a moral point of view rather than like 7% increase made a 12% decrease with the GDP. Like no one's here for that tonight.
The part that frustrated me was they kept on going between arguing that yes, this is something that we should consider for underdeveloped nations so that they can keep their families from starving, but we would also defend it in a first world country. But then they never really defended for why it was good in a first world country really well. I really wish they had stuck.
The problem for me is that it felt like Toontown was not getting to the argument fundamentally that they were making about, look, the issue here isn't the laws. The issue here is poverty. So if you address the poverty, then you don't need these fucking stupid laws that don't really have any effect whatsoever. And if anything, it's just going to criminalize poor people who have no other option. That was their argument, and I don't feel like they addressed that argument. And that's my problem.
Yeah.
You can't give up the moral high ground. You got to stick with it and find ways to make it work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of this victory is at the feet of Eris, in my opinion. Yep.
Can I say, I think a good addition to have for future renditions. I saw that Eris sent that study. Unfortunately, I was busy. I couldn't take a look at it. But I think it would be cool if people shared their sources beforehand, or even during the debate. And you could have someone behind the scenes like checking and saying like, oh, so and so was right, or this argument that they're, because it's hard to see.
I
can tell you, fact checking on a live debate, people ask me to do it all the time. It is nearly impossible. And let's say you do it, or staff, or having people staff to do it. I don't trust that either because my staff's biases will come into effect. And some of them won't trust this study, but will trust this study. So let's say this shows that the minimum, let's say like minimum wage. Somebody can find a study that says minimum wage is good. Other person can find a study that minimum wage is bad because economists disagree on this topic. And so making that a fact checkable thing or something like that.
Well, no. I would say like, okay, sorry. What I meant by fact check is like if someone says I have this study that says this, that's pretty easy to check. Like you could look at it and say, okay, like does this article that they sourced in the chat, does it reach this conclusion that they're saying, or does it not,
Got you. Hey, you. Yes, you. Right there. You. I am starting a Patreon. I know you guys have been asking for it on the YouTube crowd for a while, since usually it's just the Twitch people who could support me financially directly, but we're finally making a means for you guys to do so as well. And that's not all. You can support the #1 cyber terrorist, mover and shaker, Vince McMahon of Twitch politics. How? By donating to this Patreon and getting benefits like movie nights, special Discord roles, announcements at the end of the video of how much you have supported this war criminal Dylan Burns TV, and much, much more. Okay, not much more, okay? I only have limited means, but more than that, I can assure you. And if you support the Patreon, you will have my deep-hearted appreciation from the bottoms of my soul that you are truly a mover and shaker. Thanks so much for your Patreon money in advance. I will use it to continue to fund the liberal elitist agenda.